Hey everybody, this is my presentation on veils in Muslim women. My name is Catherine Gray, and this is based partially on chapter 1 from our textbook, which is Arab Origin, Identity, and Values. Regarding the history of veils in the Middle East, they are a pretty important cultural phenomena and have been so since long before the advent of Islam. They're part of Catholicism and Orthodox Judaism, and the picture you see here comes from, I believe, between the 4th and 6th centuries AD. And these women are not Muslim, I believe they're Christian, and as you can see, they're veiling, and it was just considered an important part of the culture. As time went on and British and French colonizers came to the region, they discouraged the wearing of veils and wanted women in the Middle East to more imitate European women. So it kind of decreased in use, partially due to that. And of course, it's changed a lot over time just based on regional politics. For example, in Iran, the previous Taliban regime required the wearing of the burqa, and obviously that was changed and it's no longer required, but it's still quite common there. And several states used to have relatively few women wearing veils at all, just within the past century or even few decades. And in recent years, they've become much more popular, partially due to the spread of Islam, and the use of it more in politics. For example, in Egypt, it wasn't nearly as common to see women veiling just a few decades ago, and now it's very common. And it's still an area of controversy even outside of the Middle East. For example, the French Senate recently voted to ban the hijab for minors. So it's still something that people debate, and it's still an area of contention within the Middle East as well. But it goes back for a very long time, many, many centuries. As a general rule, though, veiling is perceived very differently in the West versus the East. Many American non-Muslims view it as a sign of oppression and that women shouldn't have to veil or shouldn't veil at all, whereas many Western Muslim women view it as a sign of piety, modesty, and both cultural and religious identification. Obviously, this isn't always the case, and sometimes it does go the opposite way, where Muslim parents force their daughters to wear it, or non-Muslims are very understanding, so you can't say it's just one way, but as a general rule, that's how it tends to be in the West. Whereas in the East, there's definitely a greater familial and social pressure to veil because it's so much more common. And the book doesn't know anything about veiling specifically, but it is an aspect of female holiness and chastity to some degree, which there is a great deal of social pressure in the East for women to be seen as very holy and pure. But there is still a great number of Arab and or Muslim women who proudly veil both in the West and East. So when it comes to arguments for and against veiling, there are several mentions in both the Quran and Hadith about Muhammad's wives veiling. It seems to also reference his daughters veiling, so there are debates today as to whether it's referring just to Muhammad's family or to people at the time, or if it's referring to all Muslim women for all time. So for people who do believe that Muslim women should veil, it's seen as a sign of national pride by some and a general rejection of former colonial influences and modern Western and European countries, and just a way to reclaim national heritage. And some women also view it as a sign of piety and a way to represent their faith. So it's kind of just a physical representation of their internal faith. However, on the more negative side, some people see it as an unnecessary pressure that's imposed on women by their families or the cultures that they live in, and there are quite a few people who see it as unfair that women have to have such a different dress standard than men, and that men should be responsible for controlling their lust, not women. This all begs the question, what's it like for an actual woman who wears a veil? My dear friend Sama Khan was willing to do a little interview with me. She's Muslim, her parents are Bangladeshi, so she is not Arab, but she has worn a veil for many years. Specifically, she wears a hijab. And when I was talking to her about it, she emphasized that first and foremost, she chooses to wear one because she wants to strengthen her connection with God, and wants everyone to see physically her desire to please God, and to be an example and a good representation of the Muslim faith. And she also very strongly emphasized that veiling must be a woman's own choice. She does believe it's for all women and believes that it's an obligation, but she also says it's never okay to force a woman into it. It's controlling and it defeats the purpose of the hijab, which should be worn from a love for God. And she also talked about how modesty is important for both men and women who are Muslim, and that guys should be covered navel to knee, and are encouraged to grow a beard, and they have to lower their gaze when around women and never dress to be sexually attractive. And she also talked some on the difference in perception between the East and the West. She emphasizes both the importance of choice and women making their own decisions on whether to veil, and also not making assumptions that just because a woman is veiling, she's being forced to. And she'd like to see more well-researched representations of women who veil in media and entertainment. But so grateful to her for being willing to chat on that. And thank you so much for listening. This is the end of my presentation. I hope you're a little bit more interested and educated on veiling. And this was a great pleasure for me to work on. So thank you so much.